John. It is an absolute pleasure to be here with you boys today. We don't have our usual Logan by our sides, but it's great that you guys are here today. And how you guys doing tonight?
Hey, not too bad, man. How about you?
Doing well. What about yourself, Lou?
Good. We just we had that Twitter Spaces about an hour ago with Mr. Peter Jennings, and that went pretty well. So excited to have another conversation with you. And we have a new guest here tonight.
Yeah, we do. Our guest today, John. John, you got a new project coming out. I'm excited to talk about it today. Let's get right into it. What's it all about?
So the new collection that we have coming out, called the Community Collection, is a part of the larger Decentrazine Project, which is something that we've been working on for quite a while. Essentially, the driving force behind the Decentrazine Project is to go out and find undiscovered artists, people that haven't really had their chance in the sun yet, work with them to release curated collections, and then have an ample group of buyers ready and looking for that kind of merchandise. You know, find somebody who has 200 followers on Twitter, help them come up with a collection, then release them to 10,000 people that are already involved with the Decentrazine Project, giving them an easy way to sort of sell their work and reach a much larger audience. What I came on here to talk to you guys about today is something called the Community Collection, which is the next collection that we're going to be putting out from the Decentrazine Project. It's hundreds of different artists submitting one piece each, all based on the same focus word. So all of their different interpretations, different styles, different mediums, all the different ways that someone can interpret one word. And we're really excited to have so many different artists involved. And we hope other people are excited to see what they come up with.
So what are some examples of the words that you have?
So
How did you guys create those?
They're all around one word. Every piece is interpreted around the same word, which is community. Which is a little cliche, but it was just too perfect for this project not to use it, I think. But yeah, so every piece is going to be a different artist's interpretation of the word community.
Cool. And so how many artists are in this project total?
So that's not even decided yet because I'm still reaching out on Twitter. I'm still trying to find additional people who'd like to be involved. But at the moment, we have somewhere between 150 and 200 people signed up. If we could get between 500 and 1,000, I would love to do that. I mean, it's kind of only limited by my ability to DM people and talk to them and get them involved. So definitely, if anyone's listening to the show, if you know an artist or if you know somebody that'd like to be involved, feel free to have them DM me because we're definitely still looking.
And is it photographers, graphic designers, all of the above? Who should be involved, and who do you want to be involved in the project?
This is absolutely everybody. I mean, we've got a huge mix. We've got photographers, we've got 3D artists, we've got 2D artists, traditional, non-traditional, everything from fine art to Dada. There's music involved. I mean, just anything that people want to put in. For me, the strength of the collection and why it's so cool is how diverse it is and how many different people are involved, how many different styles are involved. You know, there's only, it's being able to see 500 different pieces that are all interpreting the same word and having them be so vastly different, but still visceral is just something I just thought was super awesome.
What was the motivation behind doing this?
So it's interesting because I kind of stumbled upon this idea by accident, and I'm really glad I did. Originally, we were just looking for like 3 to 5 artists to come do collections with us. We wanted to add some new names and new collections. And so I was looking around, and the general response I was getting from a lot of, especially the bigger artists I was talking to, was, I would love to do it. I'm not sure I have time to do a whole collection, like to do 20 pieces or 25 pieces. I don't think I have time for that. Like if you needed one piece, I could do one piece for you. And so when I heard that a couple times, I thought, why have 5 people do 25 pieces each when I can have 1,000 people do one piece each? And it also kind of solves the issue of marketing. Is all these people want their work to get out there. When you have 1,000 people with 1,000 different fan bases, 1,000 different groups of collectors all trying to watch their work, that you don't even have to do any marketing. All the artists are going to, they're going to help each other. And I thought that was what was so beautiful about it, is that all the artists could help bring attention to all the other artists by advertising about the collection. I just thought that was just a super fantastic concept.
And I had a question. Go so when you have each person doing one, are you minting to order? I guess that's how it'd be. Is it you're gonna, as long as more people keep wanting a new version of this collection, then are you going to go out and find a new artist, or would at some point you start doing a second version from that artist, or would it be like a repeat of the same thing they already did?
So the way the collection works is just over the next, pretty much up until the date, as long as people have enough time to get their pieces in, I'm just going to keep reaching out to people and having them give me pieces. And then between December 5th and 7th, we're not 100% sure yet exactly how long it's going to take to mint and curate the collection. But sometime between the 5th and 7th, we'll release the entire collection, where you can go on OpenSea. You can search it up the same way you would, Bored Ape Yacht Club, and you'll be able to see all the pieces in one place. We'll do a 7-day bid auction on all the pieces. So they'll have about a week to bid on any pieces that people like. And then at the end of the 7 days, we'll sell all the pieces to the highest bidder, assuming they have a Decentrazine, which is kind of the ticket to being involved with our projects.
And when you started this and what made you the right person to create this and organize this?
That's a good question, because I'm not necessarily sure that I am the right person or was the right person. I really like where I'm at now. I think that at this point, I probably am a great person to do this. But if you had told me 8 months ago that being involved specifically in the art space was what I would maybe be known for in this space, I would have been very surprised. I've not really been an art person my whole life. It's my brother who's the artist, and a very talented one. Originally, when we came up with the Decentrazine Project, it was more like he knows a lot about art and he's a talented artist. I know a lot about business and I'm a decent businessman to some degree. Why don't we put those together, use my business skills to represent his art? I had never really been an art person, but in the last 3 or 4 months since we set up the Decentrazine Project, I've just thrown myself into art, and now I really love art, which is something my whole life I never really had been an art person, but all of a sudden I find myself immersed in it and looking through Wikipedias of old artists and figuring out who Basquiat was and who Keith Haring was and all this kind of stuff. So it's been a fascinating journey for me, but I've loved it.
And you did this all by word of mouth, right? I saw you tweeted the other day, if anyone has their favorite artist in the space, let me know. I'll reach out to them. So were you mostly just doing it word of mouth, or did you have certain people in mind? Or are you taking it more so as your community members bringing the artist to you?
So this has been a fun experience just in this, something I've never done before, which at the beginning of this, I did have a couple artists, including probably the most famous artist that we have involved. I'm not talking about any names at this point, but I knew a couple people going in who wanted to be involved. All I've done to get all the rest of the artists is I literally have just spent 12 hours a day for the last 2 weeks going on Twitter, searching NFT art, searching drop your art, searching shill your art, and going through all those threads. Whenever I find a piece that I like the post, see if the person has their DMs open. If they do, I DM them. If they don't have their DMs open, sometimes I'll respond to their post and say, hey, DM me. I mean, it's just all been legwork, just going out and trying to find people, seeing who gets back to me and who doesn't. I was kind of hoping at some point that we would get to the point where artists would start approaching me and saying they wanted to be involved. It would save me a lot of time and effort. But up until now, at least until now, it's just been me going around talking to people on Twitter.
Why should a new artist or an old artist, why should they join this project?
So I just think it's a really great way to get your pieces out there and to work with other artists to all kind of lift each other up. The idea that it's pretty well known in the NFT and crypto space in general that kind of if you want to get your project or your pieces out there, you need a whale, right? You got to go talk to an influencer or somebody who's got 100,000 followers. You got to get them to talk about you. That's the only way you're going to get your stuff off the shelves a lot of the time. If you're an artist, it's got to be somebody stumbles upon your work and likes it and decides to get you out there. I kind of dislike that about the space. I like the idea of people being able to work together. And that's what I thought was so beautiful about this is we don't need an influencer when there's 1,000 of us. Even if 1,000 of us only have 500 followers each, it's an awful lot of people that can come look at the collection. You don't need one big name. And of course, I would love the more big names to be involved with it, but you don't need them. And I think that's kind of beautiful that the community can come together and help each other rather than having to rely on something like that.
And what has surprised you the most about organizing a project of this scale with so many people?
I guess it's people coming in with how many people were willing to be involved, especially at the beginning. Now that we have a lot of names signed up, it's a lot easier for people to justify in their own minds being involved with it. But especially at the very beginning when there wasn't very many people, I mean, I know how shady it looks just getting a random DM from some guy you've never heard of, and he's like, "Hey, come be involved with my project." I was kind of surprised at the very beginning how many people were like, "Sure," and really understood what the project was shooting for and wanted to be involved with it. And like I say, now it's a little bit easier now that there's a lot more people involved. But I'm thankful to all the people that got back to me at the beginning when there was only 5 people signed up and took a shot on saying they'd be involved with it.
And what's your background in general, so people can get a bit of a more comfortability with you and trusting themselves with this project? Who are you, and why should an artist care about you specifically?
So that's a fun question. I have one of the most bizarre backgrounds of like anyone you'll ever meet. I started out being a semi-pro gamer when I was young, like in my teenage years. I played Magic the Gathering on the Pro Tour. I played CSGO. I played international events, not CSGO, but CS 1.5. I turned that into being a poker player right before I turned 18. I started playing poker. I did that for about 10 years. When I stopped playing poker for a living, I got into DFS and sports betting, which is why I worked for the Action Network for some period of time. Knew those guys, and then I used that to open up my own company, which was the esports department, where we focused specifically on esports betting and DFS. And finally, I got to this point where I've been, to some degree or another, gambling for a living my entire life, and I've been looking for about 5 years. I talked to Peter Jennings about this a number of times on the phone. Is I've been looking for a way to get into a different kind of business for quite a while. I'm an old guy now. I've got a wife and kids. I'm not trying to travel around and do crazy stuff, live the life. I'm trying to sit in my house in my comfy computer chair, believe me. So I've been trying to find a way to get into something else for a long time. Specifically, I'm kind of fascinated by the idea of creating an economic setup where every person involved with it benefits. I've talked a little bit about this on Twitter, but this has been like my main goal since I got into NFTs. Is I'm fascinated by the idea that you can create an economic model where every person involved in the model is gaining something from being involved with it. Nobody's getting abused, nobody's getting used, nobody's losing their money, nobody's getting rugged. And it's kind of, I modeled it after the YouTuber Mr. Beast, who some people might know, who's created kind of, in my mind, a very beautiful system where he puts out content. In return, he makes a lot of money from that content. He uses that money to give back to other people, and it creates this beautiful circle where every person that's involved is getting what they want out of this. No one is really getting, used or abused, which is how I feel like our financial system is a lot of the time. So, why should you trust me? I mean, no real reason other than that's what I'm passionate about, and I I hope that other people can kind of see the passion I have for that and trust in me on that front.
Yeah, win and help win. Lou, any thoughts?
Yeah, I think what's really cool about this project is you're putting the artist first. I'm not sure if we've mentioned it yet, but you're talking about how royalties are going to go straight back to artists. The only royalties you'd be taking is from the original project, and with the idea that as people hear about this, they're going to come in and want to buy into the Decentrazines Project in order to get into this one. So if you don't already have a Decentrazine and you want access to this, is there still going to be that secondary market on OpenSea where people can see the community collection and that'll trade as normal?
Yeah, I mean, you'd be able to deal in the secondary market with the community collection. I will clarify one thing, which is there are no royalties at all on this collection. It's a kind of unfortunate. We just don't have an efficient way to give royalties to the artists on this collection, and we don't deserve them because we didn't make the art. So there's just no royalties at all. But the price that any piece sells for goes directly back to the artist. So if you buy an artist's piece for $2,500, we don't take any percentage of that at all. All $2,500 goes directly back to the artist whose piece you bought. In order to make bids on the pieces in the community collection, they'll have to own a Decentrazine, which will be available for minting on the 27th. We shut down minting from our website while we prepared the community collection. We wanted to get the information about it out there so that people had a fair chance to go get a Decentrazine if they want one. So the 27th is when we'll reopen minting on our website for those. And if you're looking to buy a piece from the community collection, you can go check it out there.
And why should people go and mint a Decentrazine other than the community collection?
Yeah, I mean, every 2 to 4 weeks after the community collection, we're going to continue releasing additional collections. We have our first collection, the Decentrazines themselves, And then we have our first airdrop, which we already gave out a few weeks ago, which is part of a larger, I could talk about that airdrop for a long time, but it's part of a larger thing as well that I think the people that got one are pretty excited about. But yeah, every 2 to 4 weeks, there's going to be a new collection coming out. And our job is to go find up and coming artists that aren't really discovered yet. If you own a Decentrazine, you can grab one of these artists' pieces from one of our exclusive collections, kind of getting a Picasso before he becomes Picasso, so to speak. Get a piece. Most stuff that we release is very cheap. You're not going to pay 10 Ethereum for something from the Decentrazine Project. You're going to pay 0.05, something like that. You're dealing with undiscovered artists, but that's kind of the beauty of it, right? Is you get a chance to come grab something from somebody whose pieces aren't worth 10 Ethereum yet. And if we're doing our jobs well, their pieces will be worth 10 Ethereum at some point because we're out there finding, very able and talented young artists.
So it sounds like the piece of the royalties is the part that I'm confused about. Why, when an artist could just go on their own and put up their community art with royalties, why would they then be a part of the community project?
Well, outside of, just philanthropic stuff about, wanting to be involved with the community, even just on a base level, if I'm a guy on Twitter who has a following of, 750 people, I can put a piece up on my Twitter and I get access to 750 people and maybe they pay 0.05 for it. If I put it into this collection, I'm going to get access to, like we say, if there's 1,000 people with 500 followers each, I'm getting access to a massive base of people that can come by. And so in theory, anything you can sell for 500 on your Twitter account, you can probably sell for 1,000 here in theory. And you never know, maybe you're the piece that some of these larger whales, there's definitely some guys who have millions of dollars that own Decentrazines. If maybe you're the piece that they really like and the bidding war starts, maybe you sell your piece for a bunch more. So I think the amount of exposure you get from this is great, in addition to just the fact that I think it's really cool. And I think, like, if I was an artist, it's just something I would want to be involved with just because it's cool and I can help lift up other artists. But even just on a financial basis, I think it's probably a good decision. It's just one piece as well. You're not dedicating your entire lives to it. If this one piece, goes through us, and you're not going to get royalties on it, but it does get your name out there quite a bit.
Yeah. So for the bidding, is it going to be like every day you have X amount that you're like releasing, or is it going to be something different where people can like scroll through a list and they all get put up at the same time?
Yep, they'll all get put up at the same time. And like I said, you'll be able to just go to OpenSea and click the community collection, and it will bring up all the pieces from the community collection. So you can scroll through them and have a look and bid on whatever you like. And they'll have a total runtime of about 7 days for people to come in and bid on them.
Very nice. And just switching to a more broader topic of the NFT market as a whole, we're dealing with a bit of a bear market right now. And I was talking to Peter Jennings in our Twitter Spaces about that. What are you worried about, concerned about as we enter this more of a bear market?
Yeah, the biggest issue with the market right now is the gas prices, right? Especially with Ethereum, which is what we're on, and I think what a lot of the more premium projects are on. The biggest problem is we're cheap. And there's nothing worse, and honestly, we don't like this at all. There's nothing worse than having a product that you want to sell for $100, but you actually have to sell it for $400 because of the gas fees. We created our price at 0.03 because we wanted it to be accessible. We wanted it to be pretty cheap as far as the crypto space is concerned. And when gas is making it so that people are paying 3 or 4 times what you wanted them to pay, it doesn't feel good. I don't want people paying $450 for a Decentrazine. I want them paying $100. That was how we priced them. So I think that's the fact that gas is killing a lot of the smaller projects. Even just today, I was going to go mint a piece because I wanted to just support a buddy's project that he was working on. And I'm paying double the price, and I still paid it because I wanted to support. But I totally understand people that are just looking at it going, I want to help out with this, but how am I supposed to pay 3 times the price of the item? I think if we can get to a point where gas is not such a problem, it will help a lot with the smaller projects. Bigger projects don't have a problem. If you're paying 10 Ethereum for an art piece, you don't care if you pay an extra 0.07 on it. You're paying 10 Ethereum. But for projects like us, yeah, it's certainly an issue. And I hope that that having additional issues with, or less issues with gas will really help try to fix some of these smaller projects.
Yeah, and so you said that this project is going to be pretty much the first week of December, correct?
Yeah, December 5th through 7th is about when the release will be. So I guess more like the second week of December. But
and then so there'll be basically another week in between or so where people could buy a Decentrazine in anticipation of this.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, the 27th is when they'll be able to mint Decentrazines from the website again, and then this collection will come out December 5th through 7th. So yeah, you got like a week and a bit in there in order to grab a Decentrazine if you want to participate.
And how did Decentrazines come to be in the first place?
Yeah, I mean, I touched on it a little bit earlier, but it was basically I have a brother who I think is a very talented artist, and when I saw this space emerging, I said, there's no art out here like your art. My brother's he kind of does like punk art, like 70s, 80s punk art. And when I first came into this space, I mean, I was pretty early. I was here, before Bored Apes minted, and so I was looking around and seeing all these profile picture projects, and I was like, man, there's nothing like the stuff that you do around here. Like, there's just nothing that looks like the kind of stuff you do. I think you could really have a good time here. And he was kind of like, well, I mean, I know crypto a little bit, but I mean, I don't know how to manage money and I don't know how to run businesses. And I said, well, why don't you let me take care of that for you? We'll come up with an idea of something we can do together that utilizes your knowledge of art and my knowledge of business. And then this is what we came up with. And it evolved over time as we were creating it, but I'm really excited with what we came up with. It's very philanthropic. A lot of people look at, they treat you when you're a guy that owns a project or runs a project in this space. They treat you kind of like you're out here to, just make $1 billion or whatever. The truth is we want to make some money, obviously, but the main reason we want to make some money is because this is a fantastic thing to be able to do for a living. Something that helps young artists, that promotes people. We have a big charity element. It's just a really cool thing to be able to do for a living. And if we could make enough money from this to sustain and do this for a living, that would be the dream for me. So yeah, we want to make some money, but believe me, we're not greedy at all about it.
Yeah. And so I just brought up the page here on Lucky Trader. We have the assets in here. So we do have Decentrazines, and I'm not sure, Danny, if you've seen what they looked like before, but it's definitely different. Like the type of art that are in these NFTs we don't really see in other generative projects. And last time I talked with John, we kind of brought up the fact that it's still a generative project, that it's not just one of these like profile pictures. It has more of like a what's the word I'm looking for? Like not authentic, but some of these, like it looks like the past, right? What's the word I'm looking for?
When I describe them, I always just say like, nostalgic.
Yeah, nostalgia.
I always just say about Decentrazines that like some people don't like the art and some people do. This is just the Genesis collection. It looks very different from all the other collections we'll be doing. But the thing I like about these is I feel like you could take just about any Decentrazine and put it on your wall and invite your boss over. That's the way I've always described it. Is I think you could put just about any Decentrazine on the wall. If your boss came over and saw it, it would look like a very cool piece of art. Where I feel like most of the profile picture projects and stuff, it's not something I would want to have on my wall when the CEO of my company was coming over or something, it looked kind of goofy. Or these feel like they have kind of a fine artish feel to them, but they're still a generative project, which was pretty cool.
Yeah. And what was your brother's process for creating these?
Yeah, so they're collage. They're generative, just like a Bored Ape. Each area of the picture has specific things that can end up there. Like it's very obvious that in the front right, all of them have a character. There's 34 different characters that can end up in the front right of your picture, and then the top of the background, the bottom of the background. So they're just generative like that. He spent a ridiculous amount of time going through federal archives and newspapers from like the 1920s, 30s, things that are out of copyright, things from way back in the day, and found all of these various images from very, very old media of some kind or another. And then there's an Easter egg or two thrown in there. One of the characters is called Lovebirds, and it's a picture of our parents. So just like a fun little Easter egg in there,
Very nice. Yeah, it's very cool. It's different, and it's not something we've seen before. And you've seen that people talking about one of ones are gonna be a big deal, and it's like this is a pretty close to one of ones, or they're all one of ones. They're all different. So it's great to have this sort of difference and a notable difference. If you see a Decentrazine piece, you could see that it's not a normal profile picture, which is pretty cool from my perspective.
Yeah, it's a type of thing where, if I saw one of these just pop up on my feed, I'd be able to connect the dots, and that's the Decentrazines. Versus like if it's the 8th different koala, I don't know if it's the cuddly one or the crazy koala. And so that's the part I liked about it, is you can scroll through and it has that, like, a lot of these will have those newspaper clippings on them, and it looks more like that photography art idea. It's a little different from, I don't know, would you classify this as photography NFTs, or?
It's kind of a mixture, isn't it? Like kind of collage photography, collage art. It's my favorite thing about them is I was not, like I said, not really an art person growing up, but I was a writer. And my favorite thing about these when we were coming up with them was I feel like you could take just about any of them and show them to me, and I could write you like a paragraph on what it means or like the meaning behind it. They feel like vaguely important. Like maybe they're talking about something politically or talking about something socially, or I love that aspect to them.
Yeah, when we discussed this the last time, originally I thought that each of those pictures had historical significance and were part of some big event. And this one with like the gas masks, that could have been part of something that was bigger than just the general NFTs and what we're used to. And if they had that sort of historical significance. But I mean, even without that, like you see the one with, there's a baseball player in there, like an old time baseball player. And it's just kind of like, brings you back. And I think that's where it'll probably connect to a lot of people. So I'm excited to see what these next round of art is going to be like, because like you said, when you have that many names, each person's interpretation of, say, the word community is a little different. Like I think if I were to create a piece, then my community would probably have like a bunch of people who are my friends on it. But other people might think of community as something completely different. So that's what I think is really exciting about your collections on top of the Decentrazines. So I'm really excited to see what they come out like.
And also, you mentioned each piece could have its own paragraph to it. I'm curious what's stopping you or the community from actually doing that and making that a reality. It's not like you have to, you don't have to do it for every single piece, but if you did the ones that you own and then other people start writing a paragraph or 280 characters about their perspective, I think that could be a cool way to get more people involved. And there's so many different use cases. Like, what if each piece was a paragraph in a story and it created a story? Like, so I think
I might have to steal that one from you, Danny.
Please go for it. We're an idea machine over here.
Yeah, I mean, like, for people that have looked at the project, like the whole project, the Decentrazines themselves are one thing, but one of the biggest things we wanted to do right out of the gate was put a whole bunch of different types of media out there. So Decentrazines are generative and they look like kind of 70s, 80s punk art. The second collection, the community collection, is going to look completely different and very varied. Our third collection, Dream Girls, is all hand-drawn art by one artist who's drawing these just beautiful sketches of girls, and they even have a sliding alignment bar at the bottom showing whether or not your girl is a dream girl or a nightmare girl. Our fourth collection is called the Chaos Cassette Club. It's a music-based project that's about finding undiscovered musicians. And then our airdrop, FN13, was a really experimental storytelling project where the first airdrop is just a footnote from a book. And all of the other pieces that come out in that collection are going to be mergeable, where you can create different interesting things by merging them together with the other footnotes when they come out. And in the end, if you collect all the footnotes, you're going to get a story, essentially. So yeah, we've got a whole bunch of different kinds of cool things going on.
Yeah, it all sounds really cool, but I'm curious, for someone, just you telling the person about a project, right? What's the one-liner that they can hold on to?
I think the easiest thing to say about our project, and I was kind of saying this to you guys a little earlier, I think the easiest way to view the Decentrazine Project is view us like we're a gallery. An original Decentrazine is your ticket to get into the gallery where we're showing a bunch of pieces. And if you like the pieces that are inside, once you own a Decentrazine, you can buy them. And every 2 weeks, there's a new show in the gallery. So you buy your ticket, and then every 2 weeks, you get to show up to the gallery and see a new set of art and decide if there's anything you like. If you don't like this set, like, I know there's definitely been some people I've come across that just don't like the art on the original Decentrazine. They just don't think it looks good. And that's fine. You can still buy one, because then when the next project comes out, maybe that's the art that you like. When the third project comes out, maybe that's the art that you like. So it's just, there's going to be something for everybody. And I think it's really easy for anybody to get involved with this and find something they like.
Very cool. Where can people check it out, and where should we send them?
At Decentrazines on Twitter is a good place to go. I'm at the esports plug. I talk about the project quite a bit. The Decentrazineproject.io is the website for us. The easiest point of contact is probably at Decentrazines on Twitter.
Awesome. Well, we'll link that down below. Thank you, John, for taking the time and explaining the project and explaining the vision. I am certainly very appreciative for that, and I hope people check it out and consider getting their own Decentrazines.
Hey, thanks you guys for having me on, man. I'm a big fan of Lucky Trader. Definitely a lot of smart minds over there. I'm excited to see what you guys do.
Hell yeah. We appreciate you coming on to these chats and these streams and the spaces. It's all real cool stuff, and we appreciate your support tremendously. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks again.
Thanks, Sean. Yeah, so Danny, I know we had in earlier today with the Twitter spaces, we didn't really talk about it much, but did you see the Jimmy Fallon stuff from last night?
Well, I didn't see it, but then I heard Pete mention it. Pete mentioned Jimmy Fallon, and I was like, what's going on there? That's crazy.
Yeah, I watched the clip from when Beeple was on. And so we had Jimmy Fallon's interviewing him, right? And talking about, oh, you had that $69 million sale. You're the third wealthiest artist in the world. And then living artist. And then he just had, I don't know if you saw the recent one, maybe I'll pick it up, but he just had a big auction that was like 28 million for this moving piece, Human that. One, I think it was called. And then Jimmy just casually was like, yeah, I bought my first NFT the other day. He's like, yeah, I got an ape, a bored ape. And it's just casually, I spent, 30 to 50 ETH, whatever it was, on a bored ape. But I guess my question to you is, are we there? Are we mainstream now?
Have
Jimmy Fallon Tonight Show, that's as mainstream as you get, right?
Yeah, I agree. It's crazy. I think it's the first signs. And it's I think Gary Vaynerchuk went on to Conan O'Brien in 2008 for a wine tasting or something like that. And it's the question at that point you could have asked me was, has social media made it? Right? Conan O'Brien, Gary Vaynerchuk, pretty crazy deal. And the answer would be yes, social media has made it. It's made its way into the mainstream. That's a YouTube star going to the biggest television show in the world. But then the question becomes okay, that was maybe act one. And what's the next step? Is Jimmy Fallon going to have a bored ape in his background? Are more people that come in to the late night television scene going to be? Yeah, let's watch this clip.
I'm going to take the sound off, but yeah, keep going.
No, I was just going to say, is there going to be more and more people in the ecosystem going to be artists, project creators? And is that just going to be a commonality? Are you going to see John go from Lucky Trader Lounge to then being on Jimmy Fallon in 2 years? Is that going to happen more and more and more? And I think the answer for a lot of artists, for a lot of creators, is yes. Well, the projects are going to become more mainstream. And that was just maybe the first taste. That was the first NFT person, people, on Jimmy Fallon. Is he going to be the last? Yeah. I highly doubt it.
And I think Beeple is so Beeple is starting to kind of become the face NFTs in public in like a weird way, right? And
Totally.
it's kind of weird that he's the guy, but I think at the same time, like he's got that fun personality. He seems like he's a good guy to have those interviews with. You know, maybe you have an interview with him on Lucky Trader one of these days. That'd be pretty cool. I don't know. He's pretty big name now, but you know, you mentioned this I think last week when we were talking, where these are going to be the new celebrities in the world. Like a Beeple is going to become a household name. So, you know, we're going to start seeing more and more people on these shows going through like the world tour when they come out with like a cool new project. I know that Kings of Leon, they went on a couple of those shows when they were dropping their NFT album. But back then, like people barely knew what it was. Now that people know, when you say the word NFT, like it's completely different.
Yeah, isn't that weird how we didn't have favorite artists growing up, and now kids are going to be like, Beeple's my favorite. It's like, it's pretty crazy to think about, and it's exciting for a whole new class of artists. I never consider myself an artist. I know you have Colorado, but did you think of yourself as an artist or photographer ever before?
Yeah, a little bit. Like I have that mind is how I'd word it. Like this picture, this painting right here, I did myself.
Wow.
The other one's an NFT. Oh, that's kind of funny. This other one's an NFT from our guy, Logan Larkin, his oilies. And I got it framed. I was like, we have a joke on our Club MGMI where it's like, oh, like, is that cool? Oh, would you hang it on your wall? And so I got this as a print and hung it on my wall because he was our guest on that show. So, I mean, I've done some art stuff here and there. I think in a way, like you are an artist because you have a medium that is the podcasting, and it's a little different type of art, but it's a form of art, right?
Yeah, definitely. And once I started creating on a daily basis, did I realize like, oh, wow, like we're all creators and we're creating in every moment. And a conversation is a form of creation. And oh, if you just put a pen to a paper, that's also a form of creation. And it's cool that people are going to start to get paid and valued more correctly for their creations, from my perspective, at least.
Yeah, it's definitely cool. And I mean, we see it more and more these days where YouTube has become such a huge medium, like for creators, like you're saying. And even just we're going in and create like a little 1 minute clip. That's part of the same thing. It's still a form of artwork where you're finding like the funniest clips of a video and parsing them together into one clip. You know, I think there's just different ways that you can create art now. And a lot of people think of it as those traditional ways of, you know, just paintings or drawings, but it's really cool to be able to see and being a part of this industry as well. There's just so many creative people out there. And that's what I liked about what John's doing is he's showing all of these people that maybe wouldn't have this exposure before, or were maybe like afraid, so to speak, to just put their name out there with one piece of art. But if they're part of a bigger collection, then it's more like comfortable for them. So it's really cool that people like John, and there's a lot of those now in this NFT industry.
Yeah, it's the best time in the world to be a creator, to be an artist, to be somebody who is willing to put their soul out there, because really that's what art is, right? It's you putting a piece of your soul out into the world. And it's very easy to, when you're just starting out, to say, I shouldn't do that. I shouldn't put that out. I shouldn't, this is just for me. And the artist has this romanticism about their creations and about the things they put out, and different formats and different ways like John's to make it easier and easier for that to occur is a really special thing. So it's an exciting time.
Yeah. There anything you're specifically wanting to talk about tonight? I know it's been kind of every week's a crazy week when you're in NFTs, but I know we've been doing a bunch of different content over at Lucky Trader, and we're bringing some cool names in. So I think you said you have D's coming up, right?
Yes, sir. D's. It was a great episode. That'll be dropping on
Okay, so you already had the interview.
Yeah, that'll be dropping on Tuesday. Such a nice guy. We spoke for an hour and 10 minutes on the podcast, and then 20 minutes just unrecorded. And I was like, man, like this guy really just wants the best for people, is really nice, really generous with his time. He didn't have to stay on for 20 minutes extra with me, and I thought that was pretty cool of him. But yeah, it was a very wide-ranging conversation about his journey, how he got into NFTs, how he got into the punks Discord and started to make himself known as a person in that community by just helping people, by just saying who needs help, and the nice things that he would do for people. Like if someone bought a punk and they wanted one of his punks, he'd give that person that just came into the ecosystem the punk that they wanted if he was planning on selling it anyway. So just a real generous, nice guy, it seems like. And hopefully people find value from that on Tuesday.
I have another news tidbit that I'm not sure if you saw, but it might be happening right now, actually. Remember the Smiles guys that you...
Is that reveal?
No, they're on CNBC tonight.
Wow, that's incredible.
They're getting interviewed on CNBC, I believe tomorrow, maybe in the morning. They're revealing tomorrow, so I see people have been chatting them up recently. Did you end up getting one after that?
I do have one Smiles, yeah.
Yeah,
I know you were hyped on them as well.
Yeah, I have 3, full disclosure, but it's cool art. I recognized people on the team, some of them that I've seen in other projects or just in general heard the name and seen them on Twitter. So it seemed like a pretty cool project. And I mean, it was kind of a weird, the way that they were releasing and doing their drop. It was kind of weird. So I ended up buying one in the minting process, but I wasn't sure if I was going to be able to get it. So I bought 2 on secondary before, but when I bought it was about 0.15 and now they're around 0.28. So wow. People are enjoying them, and they delayed the reveal a little bit. I think they were just finalizing some stuff, but the art looks pretty sweet. And I think that one of the issues they were having was the file sizes were just too large because they have these 3D, and I mean, it was like too cool for OpenSea or something.
Yeah, I was pretty confused when it didn't actually load, when they said we're going to reveal this date, and then it didn't reveal. I was like, what's going on here? Is this FUD? But do you know when they have a reveal date, or they haven't said yet?
I think it's going to be tomorrow now.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, that'll be
our
exciting.
Buddy Hodge is saying smiles to the moon as well. Did you see Hodge is in a project for the Cryptoon Goons? Not sure if you saw much about that, but those are minting right now as well. Those look pretty cool. I think we have them up on Lucky Trader too.
FaZe Banks, right? FaZe
Banks. So
check that out.
FaZe bought 20 of those earlier today. So I mean,
can we feature them? Can we see what they're all about?
You want me to pop? Well, they haven't. Oh, actually, I think they have. Let me see if they've loaded on the site, because they're still minting. Yeah, so I have to pull up the OpenSea page. Let's see.
Looks like Alex got in on the Cryptoon Goons. No, we don't have it pulled up yet.
Oh yeah, Alex. I believe Alex is on our Lucky Trader team now, helping with some of the content and filling in these gaps as well.
Welcome to the team. Yeah,
so I think this is why it wasn't working yet on our site, is because they're not all revealed. So what do you think? They have that old like Mickey Mouse style to them.
Yep. So I was just about to think and say.
But they seem to look different, like one to the next, like the faces, and like this guy's got the middle finger up, this guy's got a gun, the fire hands. So it seems like it's still like different enough from one to the other, which is pretty cool.
Yeah, is Ryan the head of this project?
Not the head, but he's part of the team. He's doing, I don't want to say it wrong, but I'm pretty sure he's more on like the social side and helping them fill out like their roadmap.
Very nice. Well,
yeah,
he's been a big supporter of the show, so I feel some level of obligation to check and buy and maybe mint one of these. We slow reveal every morning at 10 a.m. for all newly minted goons.
Oh, that's kind of cool. Yeah, so you buy him today and then you'll get him tomorrow. So that's probably until the whole set is complete is probably when we'll be able to actually have the rarities on Lucky Trader. I'm not sure on the back end side of that, how that works, but I'm guessing based on what he said is they probably pause the metadata and then run the back end to randomize and then bring it back up. Are there any other projects that you've been sort of looking at recently or excited for?
I've been mostly thinking about this ENS drop and what it means and how.
Did you get it? Do you have an ENS? DannyMiranda.eth?
I do. You can airdrop me all your tokens, DannyMiranda.eth.
Yeah,
it's pretty crazy, right?
I like it. So I'm of the one of the people that sold my tokens. But
at the top,
bullish.
You sold it at the top?
Not full top. It's still at the top. But I mean, I'm of the thought that I don't disagree that this is like the market cap it should be long term. It's more it seemed weird to me that it could 5x overnight off of what the original, like, here's the value of it was. So that part to me just kind of scared me off the holding right now. So I hold some tokens, but I sold off most of them as it was going up. And it actually ended up, I bought 2 more. I just bought my name. So I did LouSherman.eth and then LewisSherman.eth. And that was more just like a personal, like, I don't want someone else to have it. And I'll buy it and it's for myself. And if this does become like the thing of the future, then maybe that my normal wallet will be connected to my actual name.
Could you imagine us talking in 1997 about being like, yo, imagine if .coms are actually a thing and I buy DannyMiranda.com and how cool that would be just to have that .com. And if this becomes a thing, it's weird to think about and it could be completely different, but it's like that would be the conversation we would be having, right? In 1997 or 2002, right?
Yeah, it's kind of interesting because like you hear both sides of it, like on Twitter right now. It's like, why would I want that? But then people are comparing it to like the .com stuff. And it's like, well, I heard a good comment that was more like, it's closer to like a Venmo. Like right now people say, oh yeah, Venmo me $20. Instead, it's going to be like, oh, can you, I don't know what the term would be, but like just ENS me, 0.2 ETH or something. So I think there's different ways like that where I think it is in a lot of ways easier than having to remember your whole address, the however many characters. So that's originally why I bought it, because I wanted to be able to just, someone like I'm talking to them on my phone on Discord and they're like, oh, can I just send you what should I send it to? And I don't have to like get up and go sign in on my computer. I can just be like ludog.eth and they can just send it to me. And so I did it more from like that convenience, and it was cheap. Like it's not that expensive to get one. So that's sort of like my bull case on it, is it's just a convenience thing. And if you have multiple wallets, you can have each wallet be connected to a different name. So you know how to it's just, for me, it was simplicity. And that's why I bought it. How recently did you get yours?
4 months ago when I started to transact.
Yeah.
not every day, but more frequently with ETH. I was like, it would be so much easier if I could just type in my own name. And then I was like, there you go. And it just leads me to ponder and to ask, how far do you think we are from an Ethereum, a Bitcoin being something that you just go down the street and you're like, yo, I'll take that for 0.02 or a different, maybe it won't, right? Like maybe it'll be like Satoshis where, I'll take that for 50 Satoshis. But like, is it possible that we live in a world in the next 10 years where it's like we start to reframe currency in Satoshis in Ethereum in general rather than in dollars?
I think the biggest thing that really restricts that is government. But have you ever seen a Bitcoin ATM?
I haven't seen one in person, already. Only online.
Yeah, those exist already. And when we were talking about the mainstream earlier, that's when it would actually be mainstream. When I can go into the grocery store and get, my groceries for the week, and I just pay with 0.1 ETH or something like that. Like, that's when we'll actually be like there.
Don't you think it's going to happen? Yeah. Don't you think it's going to happen slowly, then just all at once? And you're going to be like, oh my God, remember in 2021 when we were talking about that being possible? And like, we'll be laughing about this in 2037 and be like, oh my God.
Yeah.
I pray we get to that point.
Yeah, it's definitely far away because I think right now, like, the government's still trying to figure out how to tax people on it, right? Like they barely know what the technology is right now either. And there's so much more that can be done with it. So I think it's going to have to be a lot more like, I don't know, like people are comfortable using it and just everyone has a MetaMask wallet or Coinbase wallet or whatever. And so I think that's where it's a little different versus like now, it's just kind of people that are already in the game who are interacting with each other.
It's like the computer. When the computer started, it was just people in the game, people who were nerds, people who were just like the forward thinkers. And then it became everyone having a computer in their pocket and spending more time on the computer on their phone than they do in real life. And that was like probably a bizarre and crazy thought in 2005.
Yeah, have you watched Ready Player One?
No, but I have the book on my desk here.
Oh, have you read the book? Or
no.
You started reading it? Yeah.
I bought it, but I don't have it.
I keep saying I'm going to watch it. And I keep forgetting. Dangy Wing, who's on my podcast on Monday nights, we told each other we would be accountability buddies to each watch it, and neither of us have yet. So we're going to have to, but I mean, we're getting there. Like, people spend most of their time connected to their phone or a computer in some format, like most of the day. So it's not that far away where if you're already doing everything else through your phone, why not just add buying things through your phone? People, they already have like the Google Pay and the Apple Pay, and you could just tap your phone at the register and get your items. So we're like halfway there.
I love the accountability buddy aspect of that. Like some people have accountability buddies for fitness, for meditation, for doing things. You have an accountability partner for Ready Player One watching. I find that hilarious.
Yeah.
I mean, listen, each our own, and that's hilarious to me and shows the level of in the metaverse you are. But what I had another question for you. Can't remember where I was going to go, but oh yes, I remembered. So NFTs obviously have depreciated, it seems like, and as a whole, I'm assuming you have a lot of NFTs, and Ethereum has risen in price over the past month, let's say. How has your FOMO meter been from a scale from 1 to 10, 10 being, oh my God, I'm such an idiot, to 1 being, it's no big deal at all? Where do you rank your FOMO?
Are you saying that
happening?
As in like selling them off already?
Selling them off or buying too much NFTs?
Yeah, I think I've the way I word it to people is I've taught myself not to FOMO. And I mean, NFTs have been a big part of that as well. But even just in a COVID year where, teaching yourself that there can only be 10 people at a party or whatever, and you're not one of those 10 people that are invited. Um, so like it started with that where it was more so me learning how to feel when you're not like included in that idea of FOMO. And then it sort of became, oh, other people are showing, oh, I sold this item for 1 ETH or 5 ETH, and then you're holding a similar item that you can't even sell for 0.2 ETH. So that's like where it kind of started with me.
You're a
Where
deadhead.
yeah, I mean the deadhead was one where you kind of have to put it all in reality where sometimes you'll hit and other times you're not going to hit. So what I started doing a few months ago is the good part for me is I went through the Top Shot phase and learned what is or like isn't the right thing to do in times these like as I call it, like an overclocked period of time where things are overpriced. People are buying in, still expecting like the world for these things. Like everyone's posting like to the moon, this, that, with the rocket ship emojis. And so I learned really from Top Shot when you're buying some of these items for $500 or $1,000, you see the floor on some of these things are 1,000, and people are like, oh, well, there's only ever going to be this many series one ish
One
Smiths.
toad equals
Yeah.
one toad.
Yeah. Right. So for me, it was more like teaching myself that once I sell something, just think in my mind, like that was the correct time to sell it. Like I listed it thinking I want the ETH for it, right? So
Yeah.
I also hold a lot more things than I think some other people in like my Discord and my other podcasts. Like I hold on to different things for like a personal, sentimental sort of value idea. Um, and then other things I might hold on to for too long or I sell too early. And so I think sometimes you're going to hit and other times you're not. So for me, what I was doing a couple of months ago is if I sold something for, let's just for simplicity terms, let's say like if I sold something for over 1 ETH, then I immediately sent half of that to my ledger. Just get it out of sight, out of mind, and then I can't overspend. So the thing that I would recommend to people a lot is to get a ledger. It's pretty easy. Like this is my ledger. It's tiny, so it's like very portable. You could plug it right into your computer. But it's just a safety precaution too that say, and again, just fake numbers. Say you're someone that has 10 ETH. You don't want all 10 of that ETH in the same exact place because there's so many hackers out there. We see it like every day. They keep popping up. So for me, it was more like if I have most of my money out of sight, out of mind, then I can't like just buy into all these projects that are pumping out every day. So like teaching myself which projects to actually think about buying into, and then, so to speak, like squirreling away funds that maybe something that you lucked out on and ended up selling high, just like squirrel that away because should you have actually gotten it in a weird way? So I did a better job after learning from Top Shot of taking profits and like putting them away to the point that, I'm trying to do things like, pay off credit card debt or pay off your car and like things like that. And if everything else is more like play money and you're up on it, then you can sort of take that more like moonshot idea of these are things that I'm going to hold in case they go way up. And then these are other things that I'm going to sell now while I can.
I love that. That was very useful, and we should maybe clip some of that and turn that into a little clip so people can take that. But on the ledger front, are you worried about the risk from the ledger itself? And do you view the ledger as the tax money, or you have separate in your mind for taxes as well?
Yeah, so that was the big part of it originally.
Mm-hmm.
Just the mental game of if I don't put any of this away, am I just going to get completely screwed at tax time? Because we still different different accountants and different people are going to tell you a different way that taxes should be handled, right? So, I mean, generally speaking, I don't necessarily want this to be a tax show, but generally speaking, like taxes are going to be somewhere around that like 28%, right? So if you're just mentally putting away, like a 25% or so of every sale you get,
we'll
you
make
could
up
do
those 3% later,
weekly or monthly or whatever. Yeah, but it's also the idea of like, if you're consciously putting some of that away as you're going across, then you're not going to, and again, fake numbers. Like, what if in April the government comes back to you and says that you owe them even like $10,000, right? Like, if they're going to come to me and say you owe me $10,000, I want to make sure that I have that $10,000 ready to pay them, because if you don't pay them, then you're going to be a lot more trouble. So that's more from like my mindset is make sure you have some that you can pay for things like taxes, or if you're like actually selling them off. So one thing I was doing is I like moved some ETH just back into USD. Didn't care about, like right now, this is some of the FOMO, but like, like if I did that when it was $3,000 versus $5,000, that's more of like where I get a little of the FOMO with, because, I mean, that could be a big difference, but, more so for me, it's like, just make sure you have it, because any day, like these things can crash in a second. Like we see it in DeFi a lot too, where these things just go away and there's projects that just completely rug, and you never know if just all of a sudden we see something like when Bitcoin dropped 80% in just a short amount of time, then we don't know. What if Ethereum in April was $1,000 and you were holding 10 ETH thinking that you had 50,000, and now that's just $10,000, and all of a sudden you're out this $40,000, and the government doesn't care. They're charging you what you were making at the time.
Wild.
Yeah.
I think it definitely could happen, right? Like, and it's important to note and think about, because, one thing that happens is you start to think in your mind, oh, 1 ETH equals $3,300. I remember when like ETH was in my head $3,300, because it had been $3,300 for like a month in a row. And it's like, well, that's just 1 month. And just because you frame it in your mind as something, it doesn't mean that it's actually going to be that in
Do you think
5 months, 6 months.
Do you think in terms of ETH, or do you think in terms of US dollar?
It depends. It depends on the day, but I would say probably right now more in US dollars.
Okay. Yeah, I'm definitely thinking ETH terms. When I look at a project over time and I think of, like, let's say Bored Apes, like right now, I think of it as the floor is 30 ETH. At one point in time, the floor was 40 ETH.
Right.
Because
for
of
Bored
the
Apes,
prices, it could be very close in US dollar difference, but I think of it in ETH terms on a lot of these projects, which I don't know if that's good or bad, but that's where that like 1 toad equals 1 toad, 1 ETH equals 1 ETH. I think
right.
I'm sort of in that mindset now of like 0.2 ETH means something to me, but it doesn't mean, what is that, like $1,000 now or something. So at one point in time when I got into the Bored Apes, like 0.3 ETH was $1,000.
Wow.
So it's just kind of mentally, there's a lot of mental game involved in this whole industry.
And you could see why people who are good at poker and good at daily fantasy are and have excelled at this, is because it's just a game, and calculating those risks and stomaching those risks is part of those, and is part of crypto as well, and part of NFTs as well. And I'm curious though, like in your daily life, are you thinking about things in ETH or USD? Like you go to something at the store, is that an ETH in your head, or is that in USD?
No, when it comes to that, I still do USD. I'm not at that
that's
point.
what I was talking about.
Yeah.
And so at one point though, I was thinking about like Uber rides as ETH. And that's a real tricky, that's pretty wild to get into, but that just shows like how deep at one point I was in the ecosystem. Now pulled back a little bit, but it can you can really, if you stay in the rabbit hole too long, you could start thinking in ETH terms.
Yeah, and I think that's where for me it's more like an on-off switch. Like when I'm talking about NFTs or I'm talking about things in crypto, that's why I'm thinking more in the ETH terms. But if we got to that point, like we were talking about earlier, where I could go to the grocery store and, one day I'm paying 0.1 ETH and another day I'm paying 0.08 ETH. And do I feel like I spent more or less? I would say I felt I spent less when it was 0.08, even if the US dollar amount was higher in that case. So I think that's where when I look at it written out in ETH, I consider 1 ETH equal 1 ETH. I think I'm in that mindset now.
Yeah. And it's going to be interesting if and when the US dollar ever becomes less valuable and or more volatile than the crypto projects themselves. That's going to be a fascinating day. That's the true flippening from my perspective.
Yeah, it's definitely an interesting idea. And I know that there's a lot when people come into the space and they just get onboarded, they say, oh, gas is like $200, $250 for gas. And I never refer to gas in its US dollar amount. I'd say, oh, gas was 0.06. No, I'm not going to. Like, I try to look for if gas is under 0.05. Like, if I'm rarely pay more than 0.05 for gas unless it's like a super hyped drop that we're trying to get. But in general, like that's how my mind works with it.
Why?
But I think it's just more of like that's how the back end works, like on the blockchain. Like that's why gas is high now, because the price of Ethereum went up. Not necessarily is the gas that much higher than it was, but when Ethereum was $100 and 0.02 of $100 is $2 a gas, 0.02 of $1,000 ETH is $20 a gas, but now it's 5 times that. And on top of that, there's twice the demand. So that's where 0.04 ETH is now coming out to those $200 that people are looking at. And so that's to me why I think I look at it that way. Which I don't know if that's necessarily the correct way to look or not, but I'm comparing it more so to the demand is changing and I just still have the same amount of ETH and my ETH is changing. I mean, my goal in all of this, like from the start, was you're growing your ETH so that you can then be active having the ETH and being able to spend it in cases like spending the gas.
So do you have your mission is to build your ETH portfolio? That's like what you aim to do by buying NFTs?
I think it's a little different now. When I started, it was basically gaining it while it's there, like while the possibility is there. I've always been not necessarily like an ETH maxi or anything, but I've always thought that ETH had more of a reason to buy in than Bitcoin does. Like Bitcoin has its safety more so, but there's way more use cases with Ethereum, and we're seeing it. They're popping up every day, and NFTs is one of the big use cases. And so once I saw there was something that people are getting into, in my mind, I didn't have like $10,000 to buy 5 Ethereum at the time. But if I could go into these projects where you're spending like 0.1 ETH and then you get out of it 0.3 ETH later, then you're growing that balance and you can get to that higher ETH total. And then as ETH goes up, which the long term now it's almost at $5,000. If I always thought, oh, it's going to hit $5,000 at some point, it's like the earlier you can add that up, then you're just riding the both waves at the same time, basically, right?
Yeah, I like that. That's a great way to think about it. And anything else? Anything else on your mind? Anything else exciting? You mentioned drops before. Did you have any drops that are tickling your fancy?
I haven't been like I haven't been minting it much recently, partly because things just aren't. It's not as like frothy as it used to be, and volume is down pretty much across the board. People are getting into other things. A lot of people are super interested into DeFi and stuff like that. And so it just seems like people are less interested in minting a lot of these projects, and less of them are popping up every day. The Smiles might be the one that I'm most excited about. But yeah, in general, like it's way different. And with doing all this stuff with Lucky Trader that we've been doing, is I see a lot of projects now, and a lot of them I'll read through, and it just feels like the same thing that I'm reading each time, just like different names and different numbers involved. So that's sort of been a turnoff in a way to me. I've been playing this game called DeFi Kingdoms that it's a fun way to like learn DeFi. There's another, I compare it to Crypto Zombies. I don't know if you ever heard of that, but Crypto Zombies is something a few years ago I saw. It was basically a game that you learned how to code, and it was coding in now we have like Solidity, so it has Solidity in there. They had like SQL code, R, Python, things like that. So in my mind, like if you're playing a game but also learning how to do the thing, like people are going to be more likely. It's a more fun way to learn, right? And so what DeFi Kingdoms is doing is it's like a fantasy game, but like the way you play is you're putting money in a liquidity pool, and you're earning money, you're harvesting it back, and then you can buy heroes to play in the game. And so that's one that I've been playing more recently, and it's like a passive game where like there's the passive income side to it, but you can also look up and research like the heroes and which ones are good, which traits are good. And I don't know if you've ever played like WoW or any of those sort of like Dungeons and Dragons, any of those sort of fantasy games. Have you?
No, I haven't.
Yeah, so I played them a little bit in the past, and they're really fun because you can sort of you do a little research on like what's good, and then you try it out, and if you succeed, obviously like any other game, but you can like watch your players grow. So like that's cool. I've been playing that game a little bit because I mean I bring it up on a lot of pods, I feel like, but I think the gaming industry is like the next one to actually be pretty successful. But it's just so hard to create games, and it takes time, and the space moves so fast that a lot of people aren't willing to like wait. Like there's Zed. How's your Zed horse been doing? You've been racing?
Yeah, I raced it a few times. It's very interesting because it was doing great in some races, in the $2 and $5 races, and then I did it in the $10 races and just get smoked every time.
Yeah, because as you go up, it's just the better horses. Have you found like the best distance for your horse?
Yeah, I mean, well, I was talking to Tyler, and he was just saying, do it at this distance, do it long distance, and it's so fascinating how there's a strategy to it, particular distances, and you could tell based on the data. So lucky to have Tyler in the corner. But have you done Zed at all, or?
Yeah, I have a few Zed horses. I have been racing them much recently. Problem is, I only had one that like good horse, good racer, and then I was breeding them and trying to figure that out. And there's so much involved. It's like
It's a full-time job.
cool. But yeah, to be like full in on it, it takes a lot of time that I didn't exactly have. And just in general, it seemed like there was less less volume of like people playing it at the time, but I was like super into Zed when I first got into it earlier this year. Back when they like did the drops, it was some of the most fun drops that I've been a part of. But partially because of how hectic they were. You like hopped on and you like didn't know if you got the horse or not. Like they'd pop up, you click a button, and then it goes away, and then your ETH is gone. And then you're like, oh well, if your ETH is gone, then you got the horse, but you don't know which horse you got. And it was really fun when some of those were coming out, and then the whole breeding thing was like a whole fun like game theory. I'm big on like the game theory and like thinking through a lot of these things. So whenever there's more, I think I do better when there's more involved in a lot of these versus like that's where some of these profile picture things, I'd say maybe it was a little harder in that sense. But when there was the rarity idea, then all of a sudden I can hop in and I'm like, oh, this is what people are looking for. And then, strategize different ways to look for what someone else would want,
How long was your Z phase?
I mean, I still have some of them. So I did it through the summer, probably, maybe in July range or so. It was like right after their last, the successful drop that they had. I want to say it was sometime in like July is when I stopped playing as much, but it's the type of thing that long term, I think that's one of the projects that are like here to stay, so to speak.
Yeah.
Kind of like Top Shot. Like I'm not actively on Top Shot every day, but I still have them, and I still like the idea of it and the long-term stability. But there were just other opportunities that were popping up more often. The other one that I'm in like that too is So Rare. You know about So Rare, the soccer one?
I've heard of it. I haven't dived deep into it.
Yeah, that one I was super into earlier this year. That was like one of the first ones I got into after Top Shot because it just made a lot of sense to me that, I mean, like you're saying earlier, people that are in the DFS community and fantasy community like have similar thinking, and that's where like So Rare to me made sense, and I follow like soccer a lot. The problem with So Rare for me was it's like every league in the world, and I can't follow like the Korean league and all the different European leagues they have. I generally follow like the Champions League and the EPL. So once there's all these other ones and you have to start following them, and the point system was way different than like DraftKings has on their point system. So I was like super into it for a little bit. And then once the seasons like switched over, as how I'd put it, where a lot of the leagues ended, and now it's just like the Japanese and Korean league. And I was like, well, I don't follow that league. Then I kind of stopped playing it as much. I still enter a lineup because you're getting like experience points for the players, and you could still, it's free to enter those tournaments and you could still win prizes. But I haven't been as active in like the market for it.
How does it work exactly?
So think of it like Top Shot, where you have it's like player cards basically, and there's different rarities of them, and the higher rarities, well, basically you like set a lineup. So it's you have one forward, one midfielder, one defender, a goalie, and then a utility player, which is any of the non-goalies. And so depending on the rarity of that card, it adds a multiplier to the points. So like a super rare card is going to be like 1.5 times what a rare card is. And then there's this ultimate tier, which is like a 1 of 1, or like 1 of 10. And those are even more points. So those on the marketplace are going to be way more expensive because they're expected to score more points because of that multiplier. And I don't know all of the different point systems, but it's basically out of 100, and you get 0 points if you don't play, and it's like a minimum of 25 points, I want to say, if they play in the game, and then it's like 35 points if they started the game. Like that's the baseline. But then you can max out it. If you score like 2 goals and get an assist in the game, you're going to get 100. But so like the average scores are generally in like the 50 to 60 range. And then if you do really well, you're getting higher. And then you get like the multiplier. So you basically enter a lineup. In the lineup, there's a couple different like leagues is what they call them. And so you can set a generic, it's called Global All-Star, where anyone from any league, you can throw them in there and make a team. But then they have like the Europe tournament where it has to be all players from a European team. And then they call it like Champion Asia, which is any team that plays in Asia, like a player from that team. So you basically like create sets of teams. So you want to have like a forward from each of the different like sections of the world, basically. So it was funny because I think it's the Japanese league has the longest season. So I was loading up on those guys because I was like, I'll be set for the longest period of time.
Smart.
And so I just have the way I word it to people is I have maybe 2 people of cards that's theirs that I've ever heard of before. It's all just random people and random names, but there's a lot of different sites that you can like research players and stuff like that. So I'm looking through the data side of it and saying this guy is a good player. I'm not like watching his games or anything like that.
Don't you think each one of these Top Shot, So Rare, Zed, it's all going to have its moment in time? Like, who knows? Like 6 months from now, all of a sudden people are so crazy into Top Shot again because something happened, because they fix a platform with this or that. And same with So Rare and same with Zed, potentially. Like all of it could also go to 0, but it could also potentially 100x or 1,000x. That's the crazy part.
So that's like the concern, fear people have, right? It's like, has that time already happened? Right?
Yeah.
Like, have we already not missed it? But if you weren't part of that initial Top Shot craze, like, will we ever get that back? And it's hard to answer. And I think there's just so many new projects that come out. It's like there's going to be another So Rare that could come out and be a better product. But I think then on the other side is because these were first, they have a lot more of these connections. Like Dapper is now talking with NFL to create that platform, and they're just getting ahead. Dapper's with Google. Oh yeah.
Yeah, and then the UFC is launching their own similar style. I think it's like it's very early. Like there are no books on it, right? There's no, and maybe there'll never be books about it, but my inclination, my belief is that there'll be more and more people here, and the things that we were obsessing over in 2021 will look very rudimentary compared to what actually ends up happening in 2023. And perhaps it's like this for a while and people forget about NFTs and people are like, that was the past, that was crazy. And then in 2023 or 2024, something happens and it's like, whoa, this is crazy again, right? I don't know. That's just the thing that's been going in my mind, at least.
I think it could be. And that's why it immediately clicked for me when I heard about Top Shot. Is in my mind, like 10 years from now, there still might be people that want the physical cards, but it just makes so much sense to have digital sports cards. Like people want to collect sports cards, but we have the ability now that we didn't have 20 years ago to have a moving version of that. And you could look at a lot of these moments on Top Shot. Like I look at and I remember that play, especially like the run it back stuff. But it's like, I remember I was sitting in this spot and there's that nostalgia side to it that it's hard that I don't think the generic sports memorabilia, if there's like a picture of a game that you were at that's signed, that'll still be a thing. But I think the general public wanting to go into something like this where you can immediately make the purchase, you immediately get it. You don't have to wait. Like a lot of the complaints with sports cards is you have to wait like a year and they have to go grade it. And then it comes back. And what if the grade isn't great? Then all of a sudden you just spent all this time and money for nothing.
Yeah. How cool would it be also if you could get the physical version of your NFT, your NBA Top Shot NFT? Meaning, what if they had cards where it's like a digital screen on both sides that only played your moment? And you could
have you seen the infinite objects
I have
they
not.
have? Yeah, so there's some companies that have been trying this. I might be able to look one up. Infinite Objects is the one that I remember because I want to say for Cool Cat owners, everyone got one, or maybe you had to opt in. If you had the whole set, let's see if I could find a video of one. It might be on Twitter. But yeah, that's basically what you're saying is they have your moment and you have to like charge it and whatever, but it's pretty much, it plays on loop.
That's so cool. And it's like, what if it could be powered by the sun or something so that it never needed to be charged or anything?
Because Andy 8052. Okay, let me pull this up. I found one.
Let's check it out.
Andy, it's funny on Club Top Shot a couple times they were like, oh yeah, you have it, and he shows it. He's like, yeah, I just haven't charged it though.
He's got one.
Yeah, he has one of these. Let me show you from the start. Is it sharing? Not yet. Okay, here we go.
Whoa, that's so sick.
Yeah, so it's basically what you're saying is they have
that's what I'm talking
in the
about.
back. It shows like the physical card, and this is like a fancy version. I think the way you're describing might be less like this. It's not cheap, I don't think, to buy one of these, but this is the basic idea that you're saying is like one thing people complain is I can just right click, save that, or I could just watch that on YouTube. Can you just have it watched on your desk? You can have it sitting on your desk while you're working during your day and look over and be like, oh yeah, like I own that. Like that's my, in this case, Fred VanVleet moment. And it could be like, I've seen them with those LeBrons, like the Kobe tribute dunk, and like you're showing someone I own that, but they also, it makes more sense to them in a way, right?
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, we're getting there.
The physical versions are going to get really cool when we start seeing those appear. And I think that's just the first one that I've seen, at least, that bridges. The Bright Moments Gallery also, you mint an NFT in person, and that's a pretty cool connection between the physical and digital world. Any others that come to mind for you?
Have you heard of the Nifty Slabs? That's another brand that similar to what I just showed you, but it's the image. Gutter Cats were doing it where you could get like the physical. Rally Road. You heard of Rally Road? Let me grab this.
Let's go. A little Lou Rally Road shout out. He's going back.
So I haven't bought many things on Rally Road. It's one of those things that was like a hot topic at one point, but this I thought was super cool. If you're like the first X amount of people to buy things, they'll like send you some sort of physical version of it. So I bought a piece of the Declaration of Independence.
Whoa.
And so
that is super cool.
It came in this like super fancy like glass, but on the back it's got like signatures, and here it says like the serial number 90 of 400. So they made 400 of these, the first like 400 people to buy a share of it. So in that, like I've been more interested in this recently, where things that give you a physical as well. I kind of like that idea, and I might start collecting them, which is weird because I didn't like collect things like that before. But this is one thing that is kind of cool, and I kind of bought it not like as a joke, but it gave me more reason to buy it, because then I can be like, yeah, I have a piece of the Declaration of Independence. There's X amount of copies that they have out there, and me and 400 other people have this like displayed somewhere.
Yeah, that's super cool. And I think that as the digital have become more and more people, okay, they get a profile picture, they get a piece of art. Now they're going to say, what else? What else can I have? And the physical is a great way to add to that and just give more value, give more utility, give more. Also, you have to realize, this is another thing. The physical is another marketing item for the person or collection, right? You just mentioned Rally Road now because you have the physical. That's just a data point and a marketing if someone comes to your house. And it's just an interesting thought from a marketing perspective.
Yeah, and it's like your brother's project.
Quantum Quokkas.
The Quantum Quokkas. If you get it, you get some cold brew coffee. And it gives people more of a reason to be like connected to a brand. Like Bored Ape Yacht Club is becoming their own brand. Like, people are knowing what people mean when they say Bored Ape. And I think those are the projects that are going to separate themselves. And that's where something like Top Shot already has separated itself, as people are watch a clip and they say Top Shot this or whatever. Like, people, it already is in their mind. Like, you want to be the next Kleenex, you know?
Yeah. It's going to be so fascinating when other leagues come into the scene, right? What's going to happen when NFL comes in? What's going to happen when UFC comes in? I'm excited because, one, that's new people in the space. Two, it's just exciting. It's like every league's going to have their own moment. So, you're like, oh, did we already miss it? Did we miss the boat? That's like the common theme from people is like, well, we're in a bear market now. We're going to enter into a bear market forever. But like, not even every league has their own moments yet.
Yeah,
What's that going to look like? So much space and so many new people to come in, and Coinbase coming in, it's going to bring so much energy in, and I'm so excited.
Yeah, I agree. I think we're in like a really cool time. Someone said to me earlier today, they said, we're early, but I still feel late, which is weird because it's that like initial rush has maybe already happened, but you're still early compared to a lot of other people and the adoption of it. So maybe you missed out on Bored Ape Yacht Club, but that doesn't mean that you're late. It just means that opportunity you might have missed out on already.
Yeah. When I was at the Gary Vaynerchuk and Beeple connection interview type thing in Hudson Yards, Gary's talking to, was that last week? That feels like
NYC,
a month ago.
NFT?
Yeah. I think that was last week. I'm pretty sure. Wow. That's wild. I think it was 10 days ago. And Gary just is talking to probably 200, 300 people there. And he's like, there are going to be people here that have incredible financial outcomes over the next, I don't know what he said, 5 years, 10 years, and just be really thoughtful. And, it hit me like in that moment, particularly just how early we are here. And if you're listening to this or watching this or involved in this ecosystem, if you're paying attention to Lucky Trader right now, in this point, it's like you're about to learn more information quicker than your parents, your friends. And there are a bunch of people who know what NFTs are, but there are not a lot of people who are an hour and a half into a live stream about NFTs.
Yeah.
And that's saying something, and saying something about the cutting edge, and saying something about, echoing Gary's thoughts about there are going to be people who are an hour and a half into our live stream right now that in the next 10 years become very financially successful because of that. And I believe that to be true. And do you agree, Master Lou?
Yeah. I mean, I think that's a good way to explain it is, not everyone is super deep into this, but you don't have to be at the same time. Some people were, and the people that were super deep into NFT time might end up being more successful than others, but that doesn't mean that there's still such a long time horizon. And to circle back to your old question, is that's where I'm still holding things that I don't feel bad if the price is down right now, because that's not what I bought into it for. Like, I bought into it for a year from now to still be holding it and still having it give back. And it's hard to like look and say, oh, if I had a Bored Ape, would I be holding it versus selling it right now? But I do think there's people who get so much out of their Bored Ape that it's worth more than 30 ETH to them. And it's hard because a lot of people can't really get to that mindset because they think, $100,000 or whatever. is a lot of money, which it is, but sometimes it's more than the money. And I think that's what the people that are very bullish about NFTs try to explain to people is it's not really about the money. It's about the product that I'm buying into.
And it's so crazy because the product that you're buying into today is going to evolve. For example, you buy a Bored Ape in July. Well, you didn't know Steph Curry was going to join your club, right? It's like the future utility is yet to be discovered, because what if you get something out of it that you couldn't have possibly predicted 3 months right now, 3 months into the future. And so that's the thing when you're early, when you're in the beginning of something, you don't know what the actual thing that you're going to be getting actually is. If you bought a Bored Ape in May, you couldn't have figured out that you could possibly talk to Von Miller and like Broncos players. You couldn't have predicted that Steph Curry was going to join your group, or it's just like
Halliburton. Did you see he's got the shoes? He has his shoes with his ape on them, and he's wearing them at NBA games, and it's getting covered by the NBA. Like, oh, is this the first player to do this? And then people start talking about it, and it's just everyone's seeing, oh, what's a Bored Ape? So then Jimmy Fallon goes, oh, I need one of those.
Yeah. And it's like, could we live in a world where half the players are wearing profile pictures on their sneakers because someone says, you know what, I don't like apes, they're not cool to me, I like cool cats, I like toads. Like, imagine seeing a toad on someone's,
that would be funny.
That would be funny. And that is possible. That is weirdly possible. And it's very, the way in which these are culturally relevant, I believe we're just starting and dipping our toes into it. We saw a Bored Ape on an NHL mask. We saw a Bored Ape on an NBA sneaker, but like, that's just one. Can we see it for a lot of projects? And I think that's why we're seeing the same thing over and over again in terms of project, because it works, because something about it has clicked with people, and there have been many successes. And as much as we can say like, oh, it's getting boring seeing the same thing over and over again, it's like some part of it is connecting with human psyche. And I think we have to respect that, because, obviously they don't sell out like they once did, but there's something maybe that works about the format. And even though it's boring, or even though we've seen it over and over, it's still like it's connecting with a lot of people in some way.
Yeah. And it's weird. The way that I think of it is, so I'm someone that sold the Bored Ape way too early compared to what it's at now. And it's weird to me to like make this statement, but I think I'd be more likely to just hold a Bored Ape at 30 ETH than at 8 ETH. And it's one of those things where right now, in my mind, it's so like set in stone that this is a brand that's going to be out there and people are going to know about it and want to be a part of it. And if I was already a part of it and financially okay outside of that, and I didn't need the money and that whole thing, I think I'm more inclined to hold on to a Bored Ape now than I did when everything else was going up. And it's like, oh, you could sell this for 5 ETH and then buy 5 other projects that might go to 5 ETH. And, it's all this like that sort of idea of it. My story of the Bored Apes is I was in a wedding the night that they like sold off. Someone told me about it. I was in a couple Discords and it was brought up like, oh, this is a cool project. Yeah. Well, it was like, this is a cool project. Only 50 of them have sold though. It's kind of weird, right? And so, I didn't think much of it. And then I wake up the day after this wedding and everyone's like, Bored Ape, Bored Ape, Bored Ape. And I was like, what? I was like, I saw this project before. How come all of a sudden it just went from like 0 to 10,000 in a day, basically? And so then I went in and bought after around like 0.3 or so. But then I sold like I said, way too early, and then didn't buy back in when it came back down. It was like 4, but it's still then the floor came down to like 2.5. Yeah, right. Well, that's how I thought of it at the time. That's where I don't like FOMO it that bad, because it's more like at the time that was a lot of money to be like in my mind. It's like I could do a lot with that amount of money in normal life. Like if I took it out and put it into USD, and now it's just everything's more secure as far as like NFTs being a thing long term than they were then in June or July or whatever that was. So for me, it was like at the time it was the right decision. The only thing that I and like kick myself about is not keeping more than one, because originally I bought two with the idea I could sell one and hold the other one for if it goes up higher. Because I was holding them for the dogs. It wasn't until after the dogs, because I got the dog back too, that I sold it. But in my mind, it was like, how do I know I'm ever going to have the opportunity to sell something for $10,000? You know, so that's how I was thinking of it. Now it's like it's crazy. There's 20 projects that have a floor of $10,000, and so it's just a different point where right now it sort of makes more sense to me that, and it's weird to say, but it makes sense to me that Bored Apes have a floor of at least 20 ETH. But some of these other projects, it like doesn't make sense that it has the floor of, and I'm not gonna like name names of other projects, but there's some projects that I look at, I'm like, how does this have a floor of 2.5 ETH? Like, I don't even understand.
But did you understand it in July? Right? Like maybe it's just a different part of the cycle. Maybe those projects are at a different part of the cycle or the part of the cycle that Bored Apes was back in July. Because there was a point when you said to yourself, I don't understand how this floor is 2.5 or 4 ETH. You were like,
for the apes,
for the apes, you're like, I don't understand this. Or maybe you did understand it, but you said, this is a life-changing amount of money. This is money I can't do away with. So very understandable. But it's like maybe we just don't understand it today because we haven't seen the vision of where that brand is going to end up going. And another thing about the Bored Apes is like the Bored Apes haven't fallen that much compared to other projects, the floor. And so that makes us believe that it's more of a secure asset than other projects, because the floor of the punks and the apes have remained relatively stable. So you're like, well, that seems like a pretty good investment then. That seems like if it's a bear market and there still has that demand, that's interesting. But I don't know if that's the right way to think about it either. What do you?
It is. I had made a statement to one of my friends back when, because we used to talk Bored Apes all the time. We both bought one that kind of looked alike, like the same, around the same amount of time. So we used to like, it was a spinner hat, and so we would update each other on what the spinner floor is at, like this, that, and I have some screenshots there, which are really funny, where it's like we're like all excited. Spinner hat floor is 0.8 ETH, you know, and now it's like spinner hat floor is probably like 60 ETH.
Jeez.
But it was one of those things where at one point after I sold, it hit a level where I was like, it was around 7 or 8 ETH where I thought our ape's going to be back down to 5 ETH again at any point in time this year. And now I've made the statement, after it was when the mutants came out, it got like all the way up to 60 ETH floor, I think, after the Steph Curry thing. I made that statement to the same guy, and I said, I don't think we're going to see apes under 20 ETH the rest of the year. And I still think, based on what's happened in the last like month or so, like you said, it hasn't pulled back fully like some of these other projects have, that I still am pretty confident that the floor of Bored Apes will be above 20 at the end of the year. And I mean, they're still staying around that 30. They dropped under 30 for a little bit, but I don't know if they went under 25. I don't follow it as often as I was when I was an owner of it, you know, but it's crazy to me, after the NYC event, it seems like people got back. They're like, apes did the most stuff here. Like they had multiple events, like they had the coolest events. So people, again, they're like, Larva Labs isn't doing anything for us. And now the CryptoPunks floor has been dropping a little, and the Bored Apes has battled back a little. So do you think the Bored Apes will ever catch the punks?
That's such a good question.
Age-old question.
I think some part of us overestimates the first, in the sense of, what was the first social network? right? Like, was it Ask Jeeves? That's great, but do we use it today? And so
is it considered Ask Jeeves?
Oh no, I don't know that for sure, but that's just where my mind went. But it's like we tend to overestimate the first, but maybe I'm incorrect in that in collectibles, and if you consider punks a collectible, maybe in collectibles you do care about the first. So it's interesting. I don't know.
Yeah,
I don't think anybody
kind of
can
like
really
Bitcoin.
know.
Yeah, like Bitcoin. Even though people are like, why buy into Bitcoin at $60,000? Ethereum still stays behind. Ethereum still hasn't flipped it yet, even if there's more use cases on it. Like they still haven't caught Bitcoin. And like you said, it's this whole idea of being the first to do it successfully and starting these crazes. It's kind of cool when you like see them hold, but at the same time, at some point, like Larva Labs is gonna have to start providing stuff back to these owners because they're going to, I don't want to say
They're
like
gonna
get over
uproar.
it, but yeah, I mean that I've seen that on Twitter this week. Some people are like, they haven't do anything all week. Like, what am I holding this for? And that's going back to something we talked about last week, or that might have been Monday. The whole idea of like 10,000 piece projects. That's where you have like a little benefit of having 10,000 because there's, less paper hands that can be in there, and you're not going to have 4,000 people. In the case of like Bored Apes, you're not going to have 4,000 people all of a sudden want to sell unless there's something really bad happens. So I think that's one thing that benefits Bored Apes is they have a higher holder count than the punks. And they just continue to do stuff for their community that the punks aren't really doing.
Well, the move probably is to get more and more people involved, right? Like if you think about, imagine their goal is to make everybody an ape holder in the world, then those first 10,000 are really, really valuable. And it's like, if you think about the ways in which they can make that happen, it's like, well, they could maybe partner with ticketing events and sporting teams. And it's like you get some sort of ape derivative once you get into a concert or a team or like the more people that know of Bored Apes, the more valuable those 10,000 are. But then do you say to yourself, does that increase the value of the punks? Because the apes are a derivative of the punks in some way. It's just a fascinating conversation, but I do think that you're going to see more and more people who hold some sort of ape because they've went to this place of, okay, now we got the mutants. Now we're getting more people involved in the ecosystem. Why would they just stop at 20,000? Why not make it 100,000? Why not make it 1 million? Why not make it 10 million?
Yeah.
What do people do? What do organizations do? They try to expand. And you could play the exclusivity card, but the more people involved is probably better for the NFT ecosystem, probably better for them as well. So what do you think?
Yeah. And I think one thing I've noticed more recently, and I think especially when you see this stuff like Jimmy Fallon talking about it and like this NYC conference happening, you're going to see more people walking around with an ape sweatshirt on with the merch. And I think you're going to then see more people walking up to them being like, oh, you have a Bored Ape.
That?
Yeah. Or like, what is that? Maybe not, I think it is more as you're going to recognize the brand. Yeah. And when people start recognizing the brand, that's like a huge value added to it. And I think it's like cooler looking merch than having just like a punk on you, just like art wise. So I think that's going to be a big part of it, where it's just people marketing by walking around wearing the gear, and that's what branding really is. And like you said, they just added another. I don't know what the exact number is, but there's like 20,000 new mutant apes, and they had the 10,000 dogs, and this roadmap 2.0 that they're planning out next year. They've been saying that those two items are going to have some use. And what if you breed those two together or something, and then that's the fourth species. So yeah, I agree, where at some point it's like, well, people can't afford a full ape because it's 30 ETH, but that's where the mutant apes, you can for 4 or 5 ETH, you can buy a mutant ape. But then what happens when the mutant apes are 10 ETH? Then you're going to have to come out with a new thing that can be 2 ETH. So that's, I think, the cool part of it all is they seem to be a team that's been on top of that. And that's why they're still probably my favorite project I've been a part of. And the one that makes sense to me. And I'm still in their Discord even without owning it. But I got into the mutant apes. That made sense to me. I don't have the dog. The dog still, to me, is the least of the 3 that I would want. But I don't know. How about you? Are you trying to save up and buy one of them?
Nope. It's not on my radar at this moment at all.
Yeah.
I respect what they've done tremendously and built from a marketing standpoint, from an NFT standpoint. But I can't say honestly that I'm saving up to get one.
Yeah.
And yeah, I think it's a really cool project. And I'm looking forward to talking about more projects in the way we talk about Bored Ape and seeing that. And maybe they're not profile picture. Maybe they're not
VFriends.
Maybe it's something like VFriends. Maybe it's something like an entirely different thing that we're not even thinking about that hasn't even launched yet.
Yeah.
Right. And so I think you're just going to see new ways of operating and new things that are going to come out that are just going to be like, wow, I never really thought about it from this perspective, but now that it's here, it's so obvious. And those things are yet to come, and those things are exciting. And it's cool seeing things cool off for a minute, and it's going to be cool when they pick back up again as well.
Yeah, definitely. All right, we've been on almost 2 hours now. You want to close down shop, or I don't think we have any questions in the chat or anything like that.
Yeah, this has been fun. This has been a great time.
We had John on earlier. That was good. Yeah. Oh yeah, I have you seen the outro clip yet?
No.
Got a new outro clip.
A new one?
Yeah, I expanded the time on it so that it doesn't just cut off when we hop. It was only like 5 seconds, so I expanded it out a couple extra seconds so that I won't have to cut it off. But yeah, thanks for joining. We're back tomorrow morning, right? For 11 a.m. Yeah, I know. It's crazy because for me it's 9 a.m. But at least it's not like 6 a.m. That's what I keep telling people. It's late, but it's not. It's early, but it's not that early. Like I'm gonna be up. I've already walked the dog, got a coffee or whatever, So excited for that. Tomorrow we'll probably have some of the same conversations, but we'll have Logan back for that, and then Monday we have Tom Bilyeu. That's gonna be a fun one.
It's exciting.
He's got a new project that we're gonna have him on. Talk with him on Monday. And then you said D's, that pod's going to come out Tuesday. So we got a lot coming for you guys. So hope you are excited and ready to listen to some more. So thanks for coming out tonight, and we'll see you guys later.